data came in waves, a constant barrage of alien signals, but it wasn't until Commander Derek Voss and his team had spent 72 hours combing through the footage that the truth became undeniable. It wasn't just some isolated anomaly. What they were witnessing was the Zarate swarm, a biomechanical hive mind capable of consuming entire star systems. They weren't just devouring planets, they were erasing them, turning worlds into nothing but ash and silence. Voss stared at the feed, his fingers trembling slightly as he traced the images on his console. He had seen reports like this before, alien species bent on conquest, leaving nothing in their wake. But nothing had prepared him for the horror of this. The swarm's ships, sleek and organic, moved in perfect unity, their technology seamlessly fused with their biology. They didn't just invade, they consumed stars, planets, moons. They left nothing untouched. Voss's heart pounded in his chest as he reached for his communicator, his voice low, almost a whisper. "This is bigger than we thought. The swarm's course is set for the Pyrus system. If we don't warn the Senate..." But the words died on his lips. He already knew. The Senate would ignore him just like they always did. Senator Vorlon and his corporate allies were more concerned with their profits from swarm border systems than they were with saving entire civilizations. And so far, Voss had been right. He had already warned them once, and they had dismissed his findings as unsubstantiated rumors. He'd seen their smirks. The smirks of politicians who never understood the threats Earth faced. Still, he couldn't stop now. Humanity had never faced an adversary like this before. The swarm was unlike anything they had ever encountered. A hive mind, with perfect synchronization, capable of ripping through fleets without a moment's hesitation. If the swarm reached civilized space, it would be the end of everything. Earth, along with the rest of the galaxy, would be left to burn. "We have to warn them," Voss murmured to himself, feeling the weight of the decision settle on his shoulders. He keyed in the coordinates for a transmission to the Galactic Senate, hoping against hope that someone there might actually listen. When the transmission finally went through, the response from the Senate was not what Voss had hoped for. Senator Vorlon's voice crackled through the speaker, laced with skepticism. "Commander Voss, I've read your report. You've made a great deal of noise over an insignificant threat. The swarm, as you call it, is just a small anomaly." His voice dripped with dismissive arrogance, like a man who had long since stopped caring about the lives of those on the fringes of the galaxy. Voss clenched his jaw. The report, filled with battle footage and biomass analysis, had proven that this was no anomaly. The swarm was real, and it was coming. "We cannot ignore this threat. The swarm is more than just a passing event. It will consume entire star systems." Voss's voice was steady, but the tension in his muscles betrayed his frustration. Vorlon's answer was simple, as cold as his gaze. "We'll have no part in it. You're overreacting. Earth's resources are far more valuable to us than worrying over a few frontier systems. There's no evidence this swarm will come anywhere near us. Let them have their systems. We'll profit from the next wave of colonization. Consider yourself lucky we're still considering your case." The cold dismissal left Voss silent for a moment. Earth was fighting a losing battle on the political front. The Senate's corruption, influenced by the corporate giants that profited from abandoned swarm border systems, was more powerful than the truth. Even when the swarm was a looming threat, they refused to acknowledge it, seeing nothing but profit in the way. 3 days later, a sharp alert pinged on Voss's terminal. "Sir, the swarm's course has shifted. They're heading straight for us." Voss felt his pulse race as he turned to the screen. The swarm's fleet had changed its trajectory, and it was no coincidence. Humanity's transmissions had altered their path, and now they were coming directly toward Earth. It was the worst-case scenario. The Senate's refusal to act had pushed Earth into isolation, and now the swarm was on its way, because Earth's warning had been too late to stop them. "This is bad," Voss whispered, running a hand through his hair. They hadn't just ignored the threat, they had actively contributed to it by allowing it to fester. They had believed their position was untouchable, that they could profit from their greed and ignorance without consequence. But the consequences were now coming, and they were devastating. Voss knew what had to be done. He had to act. Immediately. Earth had already fallen out of favor with the rest of the galaxy, and now it was facing a galactic storm that would wash them all away if they couldn't find a way to fight back. He activated Project Phoenix. His last hope. Humanity's last hope. There was no more time for diplomacy, no more time for waiting. He tried to warn the Senate, but they'd been too slow. Now humanity was on its own, and the swarm was coming. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. Keep your seat, because this story is just getting started. Humanity had long feared an attack from the stars, but nothing had prepared them for the cold reality of the Zorathi swarm. They were a force of nature, a biomechanical hive mind that consumed entire star systems in their wake, erasing everything without mercy. The Galactic Senate had dismissed the threat, more concerned with corporate interests than the survival of countless worlds. Now humanity was left with the impossible task of stopping a swarm that had already begun its deadly march toward Earth. In the depths of Earth's underground research facilities, Project Phoenix was born out of desperation. It was the last hope for survival. For 3 years, Dr. Rin Kess, one of Earth's most brilliant xenobiologists, had worked alongside his team to develop N7 nanites, tiny, highly advanced viral code carriers designed to attack the swarm's very essence. They were not weapons in the conventional sense. Instead, they were tools of disruption meant to infiltrate and destroy the swarm's network. Dr. Kess had spent countless hours analyzing the swarm's technology, the strange fusion of biological and mechanical components that made up their ships, weapons, and even their communication systems. After extensive research, Kess had finally cracked the code. The N7 nanites would act as biological viruses, entering the swarm's network and spreading through their systems. They would act as an internal sabotage, hijacking their navigation, targeting systems, and ultimately rendering the swarm immobile. "We can't rely on conventional weapons," Kess had said during one of their heated strategy meetings. "We have to get inside their systems, break them from the inside. The swarm's power lies in its unity, its cohesion. We disrupt that and we win." Voss, ever the strategist, had been impressed. Yet he knew that the real challenge was not just creating the nanites, but getting them into the heart of the swarm's fleet. They had to infiltrate deep into the heart of the swarm's nexus, a terrifying feat in itself. The swarm's defenses were unmatched, their adaptive armor impervious to conventional strikes. "We need more than just technology, we need intel," Voss had said. "And that's where we come in." Earth's Black Ops teams had already begun infiltrating swarm-controlled territories, risking everything to steal vital information. One of their most important objectives was to capture swarm transponders, the key to understanding their fleet's movement patterns and communication systems. These transponders would allow Earth to track the swarm's movements, pinpoint their fleet's position, and launch targeted strikes when the time came. It was dangerous work. One wrong move and the entire team could be wiped out. But the Black Ops soldiers were determined, and the intel they gathered would be invaluable. Voss watched as one of the covert teams returned with a swarm transponder, a small biomechanical device that could communicate with the swarm's network. Their success was fleeting, but it confirmed one thing: humanity wasn't powerless. It wasn't just about survival anymore. They had a fighting chance. With the information from the transponder, Voss and his team began their next phase of Operation Phoenix, finding a way to hack into the swarm's quantum-encrypted communication network. Kess's team of scientists and engineers were already hard at work, adapting Earth's quantum technology to create a system that could break the encryption and disrupt the swarm's hive mind. The stakes were higher than ever. Meanwhile, as the swarm closed in on Earth, their presence became undeniable. The first signs of the Zorathi retaliatory strike were felt throughout Earth's outer colonies, where ships and stations began to report attacks. The Zorathi had once been a neutral party, but now they were drawn into the fight, They were determined to seize the galaxy's power vacuum, sensing that the swarm's encroachment could shift the balance of galactic control. Their attacks weren't just about fighting humanity, it was about dominating the new order that was emerging. Voss stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, staring at the incoming transmissions from the outer colonies. It was clear, the Zarathi were coming, and they weren't here to negotiate. The situation was spiraling out of control. As if on cue, the Galactic Senate sent a fleet of peacekeepers to Earth, but by the time they arrived, the swarm's advance fleet had already breached the Kuiper Belt. Humanity was already in the fight of its life. The peacekeepers' arrival was a slap in the face, an attempt by the Senate to maintain control, to place Earth under their watchful eye. But Voss knew better. Earth didn't need their help. The swarm was already on its way, and the Senate's bureaucratic interference was the last thing Earth needed. Voss had worked tirelessly to warn the Senate, but they had dismissed his warnings. Now the Senate had come to Earth, ill-prepared, just as the swarm's fleets began to tear through the outer systems. The battle had begun in earnest. The Zarathi forces clashed with the swarm's outer scouts, and as Voss's teams launched counterattacks, they faced an enemy like none they had ever encountered before. The Zarathi peacekeepers were decimated in seconds as they tried to hold the line. Their energy weapons had no effect on the swarm's adaptive armor, and within hours the peacekeeping forces were swallowed by the swarm's advancing armies. As Voss watched, his thoughts were a mixture of disbelief and rage. How had it come to this? How had the Senate allowed their arrogance and greed to put humanity in such a precarious position? The swarm's advance continued, but Earth's counterattack was gaining ground. Thanks to the stolen transponders, Earth's forces had gained enough of an edge to disrupt the swarm's supply chains, slowing their momentum. But time was running out. The swarm's main fleet was on its way, and Earth had little more than a puncher's chance. And yet, despite the seemingly impossible odds, hope flickered. Humanity had always been underestimated. By the Zarathi, by the Senate, by the entire galaxy. Now, as the first wave of human counteroffensives began to show signs of success, Earth's fleet prepared for the real test, the swarm itself. But one thing was clear. Earth wasn't fighting alone anymore. Despite the Senate's disregard and the Zarathi's offensive, humanity had turned a corner. The real battle was just beginning, and Earth was ready to lead. The silence in the research lab was deafening as Dr. Rin Kess pored over the data again, scanning the intricate readings on his console. He'd been working on the swarm's communication systems for months, driven by the knowledge that humanity's survival depended on finding a way to defeat them. He had examined battle footage, biomass analysis, and quantum readings from intercepted signals. But now, staring at the final piece of the puzzle, he couldn't believe what he had found. The swarm's communication network wasn't just another advanced technology, it was a quantum encrypted network, a system that linked their hive mind and allowed them to synchronize their entire fleet at an instantaneous level. This wasn't just an ordinary form of communication. The quantum encryption allowed them to operate with perfect precision, with no room for error. Their attacks, their movements, everything was perfectly coordinated. No fleet could stand against them because they weren't just fighting a collection of ships, they were fighting a single, unified consciousness. Humanity's understanding of quantum systems was rudimentary at best, but Kess was no stranger to out-of-the-box thinking. He quickly realized that this encryption could be their key to bringing the swarm down. He just needed to break through it. The discovery was both a revelation and a burden. The swarm wasn't invincible. Humanity had a chance, but only if they could exploit this weakness. But how? The question burned in his mind. "Voss, come in here, now." Kess's voice was steady but urgent. When Voss entered the lab, Kess didn't waste any time. He pointed to the data scrolling on the screen. "I found it. The key to the swarm's control system. They're using a quantum network for their hive mind. If we can break it, we can disrupt their entire fleet." Voss stared at the data, his mind racing. He understood the implications. The swarm's entire fleet moved as one entity, but if that synchronization could be shattered, it would throw their forces into disarray. The thought of Earth having a real shot at victory sent a ripple of adrenaline through his veins. But there was still one huge obstacle to overcome: how to get inside the swarm's systems. "We need something that can get to their nexus, the heart of their operations," Voss said. "We need to plant the N7 nanites inside their hive mind and let them infect the system from the inside. But the problem is, we don't have the ships or the technology to get past their defenses. And we can't just bombard them from orbit. Nothing we have is powerful enough." Kess nodded, his face grim. "The N7 nanites will work, but we need direct access to their communication systems. The ship that gets close enough will be exposed to all their defenses. Hell, it'll be a suicide mission." Voss stood there, silent for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Then his gaze hardened. "Then let's make it happen." The nailgun mission, as it would be called, was the ultimate gamble. A stealth ship, outfitted with the stolen swarm transponders and disguised as a damaged swarm harvester, would carry the N7 nanites to the heart of the swarm's nexus. The mission would require a pilot capable of sneaking through swarm defenses, evading detection long enough to upload the virus. The odds of survival were slim, but it was the only way. Voss volunteered to be the pilot. There was no one else who understood the mission better than he did, and while the risk was enormous, Voss knew that Earth's best chance of survival lay in this one final strike. "I'll fly the nail gun," Voss declared as the team gathered for the final briefing. "We've been waiting for the right opportunity, and this is it. It's now or never." The room fell silent. The other officers and scientists exchanged glances, but no one objected. They all knew that Voss's plan was their best chance. Meanwhile, Senator Vorlan, the man who had suppressed the swarm threat for years in favor of corporate profits, continued to play his games from the Senate. But now, as Voss's mission gained momentum, the political instability that had been brewing for years began to boil over. Senator Vorlan's corruption had always been buried under layers of bureaucracy, but with the truth about the swarm's threat finally coming to light, his actions were no longer secret. Rebel senators, disgusted by Vorlan's actions, began to openly challenge his position, exposing his ties to corporate interests and his deliberate ignorance of Earth's warnings. For the first time, the Senate was fracturing. Vorlan's hold on the government weakened. Voss's voice, backed by scientific evidence, began to carry weight, even among those who had once dismissed him. But it was too late. The swarm was already on the move, and humanity's window of opportunity was closing rapidly. The nailgun mission was humanity's final gambit. As the swarm's ships continued to move toward Earth, Voss's team prepared the ship, equipping it with everything they could muster, knowing full well the risks they were about to take. The mission was a do-or-die scenario, and the consequences of failure were too catastrophic to imagine. The swarm's hive mind was unstoppable once it reached Earth, and Earth was now preparing for what could be its final battle. Voss stood before the nail gun, now prepped for its mission. The engine's hum vibrated through his body, and as he turned to face his crew, he could feel the weight of their expectations. This was humanity's last shot. "I'm going to take it from here," he said. "We know what's at stake. The swarm's going to see us coming. We have to be smarter than they are. If we fail, we fail together." He stepped into the ship and began the long countdown to launch. Earth had already given him everything: technology, intelligence, and the resolve to see it through. Now it was time to finish the mission, or die trying. The fate of humanity, of every living being in the galaxy, hung in the balance. Voss's hands gripped the controls of the nailgun with a fierce determination, the sleek stealth vessel cutting through the deep reaches of space. He was alone in the cockpit, save for the faint hum of the ship's systems and the faint buzz of his heartbeat in his ears. The rest of the crew, prepared for the mission, were now stationed in their respective posts, ready for their moment to make history. As Earth's last hope, they had one chance to infiltrate the heart of the swarm's nexus, and Voss was determined to make it count. The ship hummed with energy as Voss initiated the final approach to the swarm nexus, the epicenter of the hive mind that controlled everything. It was a massive, organic structure, pulsing with an eerie rhythm like the beating heart of a monstrous beast. The swarm's ships surrounded it, a glowing halo of biomechanical warriors ready to protect the nexus at any cost. Every inch of this place screamed death, a complex labyrinth of systems designed to consume and destroy. "We're almost there," Voss muttered under his breath, staring out into the void where the nexus pulsed in the distance. He couldn't afford to fail. Earth, humanity, everything was depending on him. With a sharp exhale, he set the course. It was time to infiltrate the swarm's most secure position. The nailgun dropped out of warp speed, cloaked by the stolen swarm transponders that masked its presence, but it wasn't long before the Nexus's defenses detected an anomaly. A split-second warning flashed across Voss's screen. Swarm drones were incoming. He cursed under his breath, knowing it was only a matter of time before the swarm detected the intrusion. The nailgun was designed for stealth, but it was no match for the sheer scale of the swarm's network. Before Voss could initiate evasive maneuvers, the ship shook violently as swarm drones descended from the edges of the Nexus. They were fast, their organic armor gleaming with deadly intent. Nailgun shields flickered as they made impact, the ship's systems struggling to keep up. The drone assault was relentless, as the swarm's hive mind communicated with an efficiency that Earth's forces had never faced before. "Engage defensive measures!" Voss barked, his voice laced with tension. The crew scrambled, activating countermeasures, while Voss steered the ship straight for the heart of the Nexus. But the drones were too many, swarming the nailgun with brutal efficiency. One by one, the crew fell, their last moments spent fighting desperately against the relentless tide of biomechanical terror. Voss's eyes locked onto the central core of the Nexus. The N7 nanites had to be uploaded directly into the core for the plan to succeed. But it wasn't going to be easy. As the drones broke through the nailgun's outer hull, Voss felt the chilling presence of the swarm's consciousness, its tendrils reaching into his mind, trying to assimilate him. They were trying to force him into their hive mind, to make him a part of their collective consciousness. But Voss had prepared for this. He activated the neural shield. A last-ditch defense designed to protect his mind from the swarm's influence. The shield was a precious technology, created through months of research and sheer will. It pulsed with energy, creating a barrier between Voss's mind and the swarm's invasive tendrils. His head throbbed as the swarm's voices tried to penetrate, but he fought them back, focusing solely on the task at hand. With shaking hands, Voss reached the N7 terminal and initiated the upload sequence. The nanites began to flood the Nexus's systems, working their way through the quantum-encrypted network that had given the swarm its incredible unity. As the upload continued, chaos erupted. The nanites were disrupting the swarm's hive mind, triggering a cascade failure within their systems. The once unified force began to turn on itself, drones attacking each other, their commands scrambled and useless. Voss could feel the chaos reverberating through the ship. The swarm's network was breaking apart. The N7 nanites were working. It was happening, but there was no time to celebrate. The swarm's final line of defense was still trying to overwhelm him. "It's working! We're breaking them!" Voss shouted to himself, his mind struggling to keep focus as he fought against the constant pull of assimilation. The swarm's drones were everywhere, but their numbers were thinning. They were turning on each other in a way Voss had never imagined. But the battle was far from over. Just then, Voss saw something that pushed his heart to his throat. The Phoenix fleet, Earth's hidden fleet, had arrived. They came out of hyperspace, not as the massive military force the galaxy expected, but as civilian ships, their true purpose concealed until now. Voss had always known Earth's hidden forces were more than just a defense project. They were humanity's answer to the impossible. The fleet unleashed a series of tuned EMPs designed specifically to target swarm technology while sparing humanity's own systems. The EMP bursts coursed through the swarm's ranks, frying their shields and weaponry, leaving them vulnerable. The Nexus, now fully disoriented, began to implode. A shockwave of energy shot through the swarm's fleet, and Voss watched as their command structure shattered. Ships exploded in a chain reaction, and the Nexus, the heart of the swarm's power, collapsed. The Nexus's destruction wiped out nearly 60% of the swarm's forces, sending them into total disarray. The swarm's hive mind, the very thing that had once unified them, was now in chaos. Voss's hands trembled as he sent the final transmission back to Earth. His voice, raspy and weak, echoed through the comms. "We did it. The swarm is broken." As the nail gun began to break apart, Voss felt the familiar tug of the swarm's influence fading from his mind. He was no longer fighting to hold on to his consciousness. Instead, he was watching the galaxy change. A new chapter for humanity was beginning. And then, just as he had promised Earth, as the ship began its final descent into the wreckage of the swarm, he whispered through the static of the comms, "Never again." The remnants of the swarm were not as easily vanquished as the galaxy had hoped. The Nexus's destruction had shattered the hive mind, but not completely. As the final transmissions from Earth's forces filtered through the wreckage of the swarm's fleet, a grim truth emerged. The swarm had fragmented into feral packs, their once unified strength now reduced to a chaotic, disjointed mass. The feral swarm roamed the galaxy like a plague, attacking the Senate's border worlds with renewed fury. The border systems that had once been shielded by the Senate's indifference were now the sites of devastation. Entire worlds that had been abandoned by the Senate in their greed and neglect were now paying the price. Refugees, once safe in their outer colonies, fled into the depths of space, trying to escape the ravenous packs of swarm that tore through everything in their path. The swarm had lost its central command, but it was still a force of nature, unstoppable, chaotic, and dangerous. Back on Earth, the reality of the swarm's fall was still sinking in. Despite the devastation and the sheer scale of humanity's victory, the true cost of the battle had yet to be revealed. Commander Derek Voss, the architect of the mission that had turned the tide, had survived, but at a great cost. He was no longer the man who had once commanded humanity's last stand against the Zarathi swarm. His body was now fused to a life support throne, a necessary consequence of the neural shielding that had kept his mind intact during the mission. His half-assimilated body was a constant reminder of the sacrifices made. Voss had fought not just for survival, but for something greater, the very survival of humanity. Now, as he sat in the cold, sterile chamber of his new command post, the pain of his existence weighed heavily on him. His mind was still human, but his body was something else. Swarm technology had fused with his own, a horrific reminder of the battle he had fought. One that had changed the course of galactic history, but he remained a symbol of what humanity had become. A savior, yes, but also a warning. His first transmission back to Earth was simple but chilling. The cost was high, but we survived. The swarm is finished. Humanity had won, but the victory was bittersweet. As Earth began to regroup, its newly commissioned fleets, now equipped with the swarm-killing technology from the battle, moved into the affected border systems to protect the remaining colonies. It wasn't just about reclaiming territory. It was about restoring order to a galaxy thrown into chaos. The Phoenix Fleet, humanity's hidden force, now deployed to keep the feral swarm from spreading further. Humanity had become the protectors, not just of Earth, but of the galaxy's fringe worlds. Meanwhile, the Galactic Senate, whose members had long ignored the threat, was falling apart. Vorlan, the corrupt senator who had suppressed the warning of the swarm's approach, was publicly exposed. Evidence of his dealings with corporate interests and his refusal to act in humanity's best interest became public knowledge. The rebellion within the Senate grew, and soon the Senate found itself in an impossible position. The swarm's near destruction of entire worlds had exposed the flaws in their governance. Vorlon's executions were swift, and soon his seat at the Senate was filled by someone who actually cared about the future. Someone who knew that Earth, not the Senate, was now the galaxy's true power. As the Senate's political structure fractured, Earth's leadership rose to prominence. Earth's fleets now commanded respect, not just because of their military strength, but because of the technological edge humanity had gained. Humanity wasn't just a survivor, they were a force to be reckoned with. Earth had the technology, the resolve, and the intelligence to keep their enemies at bay. And for the first time in centuries, humanity had true leverage in galactic politics. Yet, despite this newfound power, Commander Torren, the very man responsible for leading humanity's fleets, refused to claim power for himself. His victory over the Swarm and the Zorathi had cemented his place as a military hero, but he wasn't interested in ruling. The message he sent to the Federation was simple, and it wasn't one of conquest. Dismantle your weapons of mass destruction. Torren had seen the horrors of unchecked power. He had seen what happens when a civilization becomes complacent, thinking they are invulnerable. Humanity's strength, he knew, didn't come from brute force. It came from their ability to outthink their opponents, to use their intelligence to turn the tide. And that's what Torren wanted for humanity. Not dominance, but peace. He demanded that the Federation take steps to ensure that the weapons of the past, those that could destroy entire civilizations, were dismantled. Humanity had already seen the consequences of having such weapons in the hands of the wrong people. In his final speech to the galaxy, Torren stood before the new unified Earth government, his face stoic as ever, but his words rang with clarity. We are not the galaxy's conquerors, we are its protectors, and we will never again be left for dead. The political turmoil that had plagued the Senate was now over. With the galaxy in flux, Earth had become the center of a new order, one based on mutual cooperation, technological exchange, and the peaceful resolution of conflicts. The Galactic Council, now disbanded, was replaced by a more representative government, one that would ensure no species was left behind and no threat went unnoticed. As Voss, now connected to his life support system, watched from the control room, he couldn't help but feel the weight of what they had achieved. The Swarm had been defeated, but the war was never truly over. The universe was changing, and humanity was ready to lead, not just as a survivor, but as a force of stability and wisdom. We will never forget what we lost, Voss's voice crackled through his mechanical voice box, but we will use that loss to guide us, to protect us. We'll face whatever comes next, together. And with that, humanity's legacy was secured, not as an underdog, not as a victim, but as the new leaders of the stars. The galaxy's future would be shaped by their hands, and the message they carried would echo through the stars. Never again will we be left for dead. The dust had barely settled from the last battle when Earth began its monumental task of reconstruction. The aftermath of the Swarm's invasion had left deep scars, but the human spirit, as always, was indomitable. Humanity wasn't just focused on rebuilding, they were forging a new future, one where Earth would no longer be a distant observer in the galactic order, but a powerful force shaping the course of events. Salvaged Swarm technology, once the stuff of nightmares, was now repurposed for humanity's defense. Engineers, scientists, and military experts worked tirelessly to reverse engineer the biomechanical marvels left behind by the Swarm. From the twisted remnants of their ships and weapons, humanity began to craft new fleets, sleek, powerful vessels equipped with technology that surpassed even the Federation's best. The Phoenix fleet was the first to be fully operational, a testament to Earth's ingenuity and resourcefulness. These ships weren't just military tools, they were symbols of human resilience, an outward expression of how far Earth had come. Each new vessel bore the Swarm's imprint, but humanity had made it their own. The ships were faster, more maneuverable, and, thanks to the swarm's adaptive technology, they could self-repair using nano-based systems, making them far more resilient than any ship in the galaxy. As Earth's fleets grew in number and strength, the galaxy took notice. Once a small, isolated planet on the fringes of known space, Earth now stood at the heart of the galaxy's political and military landscape. The Federation, which had once dismissed Earth as a mere afterthought, now saw humanity's growing power as both an asset and a threat. The Zarathi, former allies of the Swarm, had already begun their defection, sensing that Earth's technology and strength were vital to surviving in this new age of galactic uncertainty. The Federation's council, shaken by the failure of its previous handling of the Swarm threat, now saw Earth as a necessary partner. Their skepticism lingered, but it was tempered by the undeniable truth that humanity had the only fleet capable of facing the galaxy's next great threat. They were no longer a species of survival. They were a species of leadership, and their influence began to expand far beyond their borders. At the helm of this new direction was Admiral Torran, who had become Earth's greatest military leader. Despite his victory and hero status, Torran was resolute in his refusal to take political power. His leadership, although invaluable in the military, was never about dominance or control. He had seen firsthand what unchecked power could do, and his singular goal was to ensure galactic security and peacekeeping, not to impose Earth's will on others. Our role is to protect the peace, not to dominate. The galaxy is vast, and it must remain free, Torran had stated, his voice unwavering. We have power now, but it will be for the greater good. Humanity must lead with wisdom, not with force. This vision set the tone for humanity's post-swarm future. Earth's military focused on ensuring the stability of the galaxy, preventing future conflicts, and maintaining peace between former enemies and allies alike. Humanity's military doctrine shifted from defensive to proactive peacekeeping. Earth had learned the harsh lessons of the past. Strength without restraint could lead to devastating consequences. As Earth's influence grew, so too did its relationships with the galaxy's other species. New alliances were forged, some born of necessity, others out of respect for humanity's strength and technological prowess. The Zarathi, once enemies of Earth, now found themselves working alongside humanity, seeking protection from the chaos that had unfolded in the wake of the Swarm's downfall. In return, Earth's fleets offered security, providing assistance in repelling the last remnants of the Swarm's feral packs. The Galactic Council, while still skeptical, could no longer ignore the reality of Earth's position. While Earth's fleet stood as the most powerful force in the galaxy, its greatest achievement was the legacy it built. Torran had crafted a vision for a future where humanity wouldn't just be survivors in a galaxy of giants, but leaders in a galaxy that had learned to respect their strength. Humanity had transcended their previous limitations, using swarm technology not for conquest, but for peacekeeping and protection. The Phoenix Fleet, the shining example of humanity's new military might, became a symbol of hope, not just for Earth, but for every planet that had ever faced oppression. Humanity, once relegated to the edges of the galaxy, now had a say in the fate of the stars. As Earth's power grew, so did the pressure on the Federation to adjust its strategies and relationships. The Senate, having been a bystander in humanity's rise, was forced to recalibrate its position in the galaxy. Earth was no longer a side player in intergalactic politics. Humanity had earned their place, and the galaxy had no choice but to recognize it. Despite this, Torran's vision remained clear. Humanity's power wasn't for domination. It was to ensure that the galaxy would never again face a threat like the Swarm. Under Torran's leadership, humanity's fleet focused on maintaining peace through force if necessary, but always guarding against tyranny. Earth had become the vanguard of peace, standing ready to protect the galaxy from any force that would threaten it. And Torran? He remained a humble leader, disinterested in political power but resolute in ensuring that humanity's legacy would be one of stability, security, and cooperation. Humanity had been pushed to the brink of extinction, but from the ashes of that near demise, they had risen not just to survive, but to lead the galaxy toward a new era of peace and prosperity. And though the universe would continue to challenge them, one thing was certain: humanity would not bow down. They had earned their place in the stars, and they would protect it with everything they had. The galaxy was in flux. The once unstoppable Zorathi, a civilization that had ruled with an iron fist, was now crumbling, its remnants scattered across the void like a broken ship on a stormy sea. The swarm's defeat, coupled with the swift rise of Earth as a military power, had turned the balance of power upside down. Former enemies were becoming allies. Pirates were turning into loyal partners, and the Galactic Order, that age-old structure that had maintained peace for centuries, was suddenly fracturing. It began with the Zorathi defectors. As their homeworld fell into chaos after the collapse of the Corinthian hegemony, many Zorathi commanders, once loyal to their corrupt rulers, realized that their former empire was no longer the beacon of strength it once had been. The Zorathi warriors, who had once seen themselves as the galaxy's true masters, now found themselves on the losing side of a war they could no longer win. Their fleet shattered, their people displaced. They looked to Earth not as a former foe, but as a lifeline. The Zorathi defectors, fearing the complete collapse of their civilization, saw in Earth a new future, one where survival was the priority over dominance. They knew that humanity, with its technological superiority and strategic brilliance, held the keys to galactic peace. And so, they began to come to Earth in droves, eager to forge new alliances and escape the fallout of the Corinthian collapse. Earth's Phoenix fleet, a newly minted symbol of humanity's military prowess, became the foundation of these new bonds. These new alliances were born out of necessity and mutual respect. Earth's leaders, now adept at diplomacy, quickly saw the opportunity in forming strategic pacts with the Zorathi defectors. Humanity wasn't just trying to maintain control, it was offering solutions, cooperation, and a way forward. The Zorathi, with their combat experience, made powerful allies in humanity's new vision for the galaxy. They'd brought with them invaluable knowledge of swarm tactics, while humanity offered them the technology to rebuild and defend themselves. The pirates who had once roamed the edges of the galaxy, unchallenged and free, were now facing the consequences of the Corinthian collapse. Their former masters were gone, their sources of power destroyed, and many were left without purpose. As the Zorathi defectors found their way to Earth, so too did the pirate factions, each looking for a new cause, a new purpose. Earth, with its rising influence and peacekeeping force, became an attractive ally. Once viewed as outcasts, these pirate factions saw in Earth a chance for redemption. The chaos of the Corinthian collapse and the aftermath of the swarm's defeat left many struggling to survive in a galaxy that was changing fast. Under the banner of humanity, they found a chance to contribute, to have a role in the future of galactic peace. Humanity's reputation as a peacekeeper was quickly solidifying. Where once Earth was seen as a backwater planet, barely on the galactic radar, it was now viewed as a force capable of shaping the galaxy's future. This new identity was built not on military might alone, but on intelligence, adaptability, and the ability to broker alliances with former enemies. Earth's diplomatic corps, backed by the Phoenix fleet's newly expanded capabilities, worked tirelessly to broker trade agreements and strategic pacts with former Zorathi systems and other galactic entities. Earth was no longer on the fringe, it was in the heart of the galaxy's political and military discourse. As more Zorathi worlds came to Earth seeking protection, they brought with them technology, resources, and intelligence that bolstered humanity's position. The Senate, long the seat of power for the galaxy's elite, began to crumble under the weight of its own failings. The old power structures were no longer relevant. Earth, with its rising military strength, diplomatic savvy, and the growing influence of the Zorathi defectors, had changed the rules of galactic politics. The Senate's authority began to erode as more and more systems gravitated toward Earth's leadership. The Zorathi's retreat from the Senate's influence was complete. They had abandoned their former masters, recognizing that Earth was now the future. The pirates, once uncontrollable and disruptive, now found a place within the new galactic order under human leadership. Earth's newfound alliances were not just based on survival, they were based on a vision for the future. A vision where cooperation, not war, could lead the galaxy forward. Humanity's status had shifted dramatically. From a species once thought weak, a species that had been abandoned when they were on the brink of extinction, they now stood as the galaxy's most influential power. Earth had moved from the fringes to the center of galactic politics. Its alliances were solidified not by sheer strength, but by wisdom. The wisdom to recognize the need for unity and cooperation. The wisdom to understand that in this vast universe, survival depended on working together, not conquering. With Earth at the forefront, galactic order had shifted. Torren, who had once led humanity to victory, now saw himself not as the conqueror, but as the keeper of peace. His leadership, now respected across the stars, was not defined by military victories, but by his ability to maintain balance in a galaxy on the edge of chaos. As the new order began to take shape, it was clear that humanity had found its place in the galaxy. The old ways were dying, and the future now belonged to a new breed of leaders, those who had survived, adapted, and risen from the ashes to forge a new path forward. The galaxy had watched humanity's rise, and now the galaxy was ready to follow. The Zarathi Dominion had crumbled, its once mighty empire now reduced to a shattered collection of feral factions fighting for scraps of power. The once unified force had imploded in on itself, leaving its territories in chaos. Rebel factions, previously oppressed under the iron grip of the Zarathi, now seized control of the fractured worlds. What was once a monolithic power was now a fractured, unstable series of warring colonies, scrambling for influence and survival. The Swarm, once defeated, now lived on in the chaos that followed, a reminder of the dangers of underestimating Earth. Humanity's rise, however, was undeniable. Earth, once considered a distant, insignificant player in galactic politics, had not only survived, but had emerged as the leading power in the galaxy. The Federation, wary but acknowledging humanity's unparalleled strength, granted Earth full membership. Their decision was not one made lightly, but one rooted in the undeniable reality. Earth had proven itself capable of defending itself, maintaining stability, and using its technological edge to protect not just its own, but the entire galaxy. As Earth's influence spread, its leadership position became more secure. Humanity had shown its strength and resolve in the face of impossible odds. No longer were they seen as survivors, but as dominant players, with the capability and will to shape the future of the galaxy. The galaxy, having witnessed humanity's unexpected resilience in the face of the Swarm's devastation and the Zarathi collapse, now understood the true nature of Earth. It wasn't just about strength, it was about wisdom, adaptability, and an unwavering resolve to protect the greater good. Admiral Torren's legacy became intertwined with the galaxy's future. Once a humble leader, now the very symbol of human perseverance, his influence shaped the new galactic order. Earth was no longer just a participant, it was the cornerstone of this new era. Torren's vision of a peacekeeping force, one that prioritized cooperation and diplomacy over domination, became the guiding principle for Earth's interaction with other species. His words, "We will not fight for dominance, we will fight to protect the peace," echoed throughout the galactic halls of power. The galaxy now respected humanity not just as survivors of an extinction-level event, but as guardians of peace. As the war-ravaged galaxy began to rebuild, Dr. Ren Voss, the scientist who had led the nailgun mission, became a symbol of humanity's willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. His body, forever half-assimilated into a mechanical throne, was a reminder of the cost of victory. Voss had given everything, becoming more than human in the process. His existence was a living testament to what humanity was willing to do to protect the galaxy, and his status as a symbol of sacrifice inspired those across the galaxy. It wasn't just about military strength. It was about the willingness to sacrifice everything for the future of all. Humanity's reputation, once defined by its fragility and defenselessness, was now defined by power and purpose. The Federation's cautious approach gave way to admiration, as Earth continued to prove its value, not just as a force, but as the bedrock of stability in a galaxy recovering from war. The Zorathi's remnants now feared humanity's reach, as Earth's fleet patrolled the galaxy, bringing order to the chaos the Zorathi had created. The Federation's official recognition of Earth as a full member marked a profound shift in galactic politics. The once fragmented and fractured galaxy now had a new order, one in which Earth held a leadership position. There were whispers among the galactic powers, concern and awe in equal measure, that humanity had grown into a force so powerful that to ignore it would be catastrophic. Earth wasn't simply a surviving species anymore. It had redefined its destiny and had done so by shaping a future where strength and wisdom would determine the fate of the stars. The galaxy's response was clear. Earth had arrived, not just as a survivor, but as the dominant power, the one force capable of maintaining peace and order in a galaxy that had seen too much war. No longer were they the fragile species hidden on the edge of the stars. They were now the glue that held the galaxy together, rebuilding and forging new alliances, all the while ensuring that the Zorathi's mistakes wouldn't be repeated. In the days following the galactic shift, the Phoenix Fleet, humanity's greatest achievement, continued to expand its influence, not just through force, but through partnerships with once dominant empires. Earth's technological advancements, once thought impossible, were now shared freely with their new allies. No longer were the gates of power closed to humanity. The future was theirs to shape, and the galaxy was ready to follow. Humanity had been left for dead. Now they led the galaxy into a new age, one where survival was not enough. It was about thriving, coexisting, and leading. The lesson the galaxy had learned was simple and yet powerful. Never again would humanity be underestimated. They had emerged from the ashes, not just to survive, but to dominate the stars, and the universe would forever be changed because of it. What do you think would happen if humanity rose to lead the galaxy? How would other species react? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more thrilling HFY stories that show humanity's journey from survival to dominance.